The Passion reading according to John. Jesus went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to a place where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. Now Judas, who had betrayed him, also knew the place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Jesus brought a detachment of soldiers together with the police from the chief priests and the Pharisees, and they came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing that all of this was to happen to him, came forward and asked them,
"Who are you looking for?"
They answered,
"Jesus of Nazareth."
Jesus replied,
"I am."
Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am," they stepped back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them,
"Who are you looking for?"
And they said,
"Jesus of Nazareth."
Jesus answered,
"I told you that I am. So if you are looking for me, let these men go."
This was to fulfill the word that he had spoken. I did not lose a single one of those whom you gave me. Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter,
"Put your sword back in its sheath. Am I not to drink the cup the Father has given me?"
So the soldiers, their officer, and the temple police arrested Jesus and bound him. First, they took Jesus to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the temple authorities that it was better to have one person die for the people. Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. Since that disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest, but Peter was standing outside at the gate. So the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out, spoke to the woman who guarded the gate, and brought Peter in. The woman said to Peter,
"You are not also of this man's disciples, are you?"
He said,
"I am not."
Now the slaves and the police had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing around it and warming themselves. Peter also was standing with them and warming himself. Then the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teachings. Jesus answered,
I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where all our people come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who heard what I said to them. They know what I said.
When he had said this, one of the police standing nearby struck Jesus on the face, saying,
Is that how you answer the high priest?
Jesus answered,
If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me?
Then Annas sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They asked him,
You are not also one of his disciples, are you?
He denied it and said,
I am not.
One of the slaves of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked.
Did I not see you in the garden with him?
Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment the cock crowed. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said,
What accusation do you bring against this man?
They answered,
If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you.
Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law.
We are not permitted to put anyone to death.
This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him,
Are you the king of the Judeans?
Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?
I am not one of them, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the temple leaders. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here.
Oh, so you are a king.
You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice.
What is truth?
After Pilate had said this, he went out to the people again and told them,
I find no case against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Judeans?
All those gathered, "That's all of you," shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him, saying,
Hail, King of the Judeans.
mocking him on the face, striking him on the face. Pilate went out again and said to them,
Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no case against him.
So Jesus came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them,
Here is the man.
When the chief priests and the police saw him, they all, again, that's you, shouted,
Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him.
Now when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid than ever. Pilate entered his headquarters again and asked Jesus,
"Where are you from?"
but Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate therefore said to him,
"Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to release you and power to crucify you?"
You would have no power over me unless it had been given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin.
From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the temple authorities cried out,
If you release this man, you are no friend of the emperor. Everyone who claims to be a king sets himself against the emperor.
When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside and sat on the judge's bench at a place called the Stone Pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover, and it was about noon. He said to them,
"Here is your king." "Shall I crucify your king?"
The chief priests answered.
We have no king but the emperor.
Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. They crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, with Jesus between them. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Judeans." Many read this inscription because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. Then the chief priests of the Judeans said to Pilate,
Do not write the king of the Judeans, but this man said, I am king of the Judeans.
Pilate answered,
"What I have written, I have written."
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his clothes and divided them into 4 pairs, one for each soldier. They also took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another,
Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who will get it.
"This was to fulfill what the scripture says. They divided my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots." And that is what the soldiers did. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother,
"Woman, here is your son.
Then he said to the disciple,
Here is your mother."
and from that hour the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture,
"I am thirsty."
A jar full of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop, and they held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said,
It is finished.
Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Since it was the day of preparation, they did not want the bodies left on the cross during the Sabbath, especially because that Sabbath was a day of solemnity. So they asked Pilate to have the legs of the crucified men broken and their bodies removed.
Then the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other who had been crucified with him.
But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once blood and water came out.
He who saw this has testified, so that you might also believe. His testimony is true, and he knows that he tells the truth.
These things occurred so that the scripture might be fulfilled.
None of his bones shall be broken.
And again, another passage of the scripture says,
They will look on the one whom they have pierced.
After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was the disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the temple authorities, asked Pilate to let him take away the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed his body.
Nicodemus, who had at first come by night to Jesus, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths according to their custom.
Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been lain. And so, because it was the day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.
We know this story. The pressure rises. The truth bends. And then crowds seem to form. And we know this system. It preserves itself. It maintains order. And it calls all that it does justice. And we know these people. We know people like Peter. Peter, who was certain that force would fix what fear had already broken. We know people like Pilate. Pilate, who was caught between truth and power, and chose what kept things stable. And then, of course, the crowds. The crowds were loud, they were reactive, they were so certain, and they were completely wrong. You see, the story that we hear on Good Friday is not hard to understand, but it is hard to face. You see, this same story that we heard tonight is happening right now in our midst. In the wars that we pretend to justify, where human lives become the cost. In the environment that we destroy, where our food, our familiarity, and our future literally burns and floods and breaks. It is in those who get pushed to the outside, the immigrants, refugees, trans people, who are all called problems instead of people. It is in the ways that violence becomes the answer to every wrongdoing and every power imbalance. And so too it is in the quieter ways, the ways where we ourselves avoid, we justify, and we look away, because status quo serves us all so well. And all of it, all of that, all that we heard, has led here to the cross. So tonight's question is not whether we understand this story, because of course we understand this story all too well. But instead, the question of tonight is, where the hell is God in the midst of all of it? You see, in tonight's story, Jesus did not step away. He did not fight back. He did not run. He did not save himself. He did not resist, but instead, he went where the story led. Into betrayal, into violence, into suffering, and into death. And this is tonight's claim. The claim that there is no place, absolutely no place, that our God will not go. Not the worst of what we do, not the systems that we help build, not the harm that we seem to justify, not even death itself. There is no place that our God will not go. Our God enters it fully, completely, and without turning away. And tonight, that is what we are reminded. There is no place that God will not go. For even now, even in the midst of this story that continues to unfold, God is